It was a quiet Friday evening. My daughter Lily was only 10 years old. She had always been an independent, brave little girl. My wife and I had to attend a dinner party that night, so we decided to leave Lily home alone for the first time. It wasn't far, just a few blocks away. We trusted her to be safe. "Call us if you need anything, okay?" I told her before we left. Lily nodded with a smile, waving as we walked out the door. The house was peaceful, and Lily enjoyed having it all to herself. She curled up on the couch, watching her favorite cartoons. Everything seemed fine until the power went out. Suddenly, the house was plunged into darkness. The TV turned off with a loud pop, and the only sound was the wind howling outside. Lily stood up and looked around, her heart beating faster. She reached for her phone to call us, but the battery had died. She tried the light switch, but nothing worked. She walked over to the window, hoping to see lights from the other houses on the street. But they were all dark too. A blackout, she thought, trying to stay calm. But then, she heard it. A soft knock on the front door. Lily froze. Who could be knocking at this hour? She knew better than to open the door, so she stayed where she was, holding her breath. The knocking stopped for a moment, and she sighed in relief. Maybe it was just the wind. But then it started again, louder this time. Knock, knock, knock. Her heart pounded in her chest. She backed away from the door, trying to think of what to do. There was no one else in the house, no one to help her. The knocking stopped again, and the house fell silent. But just as she turned to walk back to the living room, she heard something even worse. A voice. "Lily." It was a whisper, soft but clear. "Lily, open the door." Lily's blood ran cold. How did they know her name? She ran to the kitchen and grabbed a knife, her hands shaking. She pressed her back against the wall, listening, but the voice had stopped. The house was silent again, but the silence felt wrong, as if something was waiting. She tiptoed to the front door and looked through the peephole, but there was no one there. The street outside was empty, and the darkness seemed to press against the windows. Then, from behind her, she heard it again. "Lily." Her heart almost stopped. The voice wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was coming from inside the house. Lily turned slowly, clutching the knife, her eyes wide with fear. She scanned the dark living room, but she couldn't see anything. The shadows seemed to shift and move, and she had the terrible feeling that she wasn't alone. Suddenly, there was a loud bang from upstairs. Something was moving in her room. Lily ran to the stairs, knife still in hand, trying to be brave. She knew she had to see what it was, even though every part of her wanted to run outside and never look back. She reached the top of the stairs and slowly pushed her bedroom door open. The room was dark, but she could see a figure standing by her bed. It was tall and thin, its face hidden in the shadows. The air in the room was cold, freezing, and Lily could see her breath in front of her. The figure turned to face her. "Lily," it whispered. Lily screamed and ran down the stairs, throwing the door open and running outside into the cold night air. She didn't stop running until she reached the dinner party, tears streaming down her face. When we got back home, we found the front door wide open, the lights back on. Everything looked normal, but Lily refused to go back inside. She said there was something in the house, something that knew her name. To this day, she won't talk about what she saw in her room that night. And sometimes, when I'm home alone, I think I hear it too. Knock, knock, knock. It was a cold, quiet night, and Sarah was home alone for the weekend. Her parents had gone out of town, leaving her in charge of the house. At first, she enjoyed the freedom. She made some popcorn, grabbed a blanket, and settled on the couch to watch a horror movie. The house was old, but Sarah didn't mind. She had lived there her entire life and knew every creaky floorboard and drafty window. As she watched the movie, the wind howled outside, and tree branches tapped against the windows, casting shadows that flickered in the dim light of the television. Sarah wasn't scared, though. She loved horror movies, and being alone didn't bother her. At least, not at first. About halfway through the movie, Sarah heard something strange. Soft footsteps coming from upstairs. She paused the movie and listened, holding her breath. For a moment, there was silence. She let out a nervous laugh, convincing herself it was nothing more than the old house settling. But just as she pressed play to resume the movie, the footsteps came again, louder this time. Sarah's heart started to race. She grabbed her phone and checked the time, 11:15 p.m. She was certain she was alone in the house, but now she wasn't so sure. She quickly sent a text to her best friend, Emily. "I think there's someone in the house," Emily replied almost instantly. "You're probably just imagining things. You're watching a scary movie after all." Sarah wanted to believe that, but the sound of footsteps echoed through her mind. She decided to check it out. Armed with a flashlight and a kitchen knife, she cautiously made her way up the stairs. The wooden steps creaked under her weight, making the silence feel even heavier. At the top of the stairs, the hallway was pitch black. The door to her parents' bedroom was slightly ajar, which was strange because she knew she hadn't been in there. With her flashlight shaking in her hand, she pushed the door open and looked inside. The room was empty, just as it should be. As she was about to turn and go back downstairs, Sarah heard something else. This time, a faint whispering. It was coming from above her. She froze, eyes widening as she realized the sound was coming from the attic. The attic door, which was usually shut tight, was now slightly open. Her stomach dropped, and she felt her pulse quicken. She debated whether to check it out or run, but her curiosity got the better of her. Slowly, she climbed the narrow attic stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. The air grew colder as she reached the top, and the whispering became clearer, though she couldn't make out the words. Shining her flashlight around, she saw the usual clutter of old boxes and dusty furniture. Everything seemed still, except for an old rocking chair in the corner, gently rocking back and forth. Sarah's breath hitched in her throat. No one was sitting in it, but the chair moved as if someone had just been there. Suddenly, the whispering stopped. The rocking chair stilled. Silence filled the attic, thick and unsettling. She turned to leave, her heart pounding in her chest. But just as she reached the attic stairs, a cold gust of air brushed against the back of her neck. Sarah spun around, her flashlight beam shaking wildly, but there was nothing there. She bolted down the stairs, nearly tripping in her panic, and slammed the attic door shut. Her breathing was ragged, and her mind raced. What had she just seen? What was happening? As she stood there, trying to calm herself, the lights in the house flickered and went out, plunging her into complete darkness. The only light now was the faint glow from her phone. She fumbled with it, trying to dial Emily, but the call wouldn't go through. No signal. Sarah's heart raced even faster as she turned to run to the windows, hoping to escape. But before she could take another step, she heard footsteps again, this time coming from the stairs behind her. She froze. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, moving closer and closer. She turned her flashlight towards the stairs, but no one was there. She swallowed hard, trying to make sense of it all. That's when she saw it. Written in the dust on the wall, clear as day, were 3 chilling words. "You're not alone." Sarah's breath caught in her throat, and her hands began to shake. The room suddenly felt colder, almost freezing, and then she heard it. A low, deep chuckle echoing from somewhere in the house. She turned to run, but the darkness seemed to close in on her. The last thing she heard before everything went black was the sound of footsteps, slow and heavy, right behind her. After that night, Sarah was never seen again. The house remained empty, but neighbors sometimes reported strange sounds, footsteps, whispers, and the occasional laughter, echoing from inside.